Welcome, Internet, to a very special episode of the PixelPlay Podcast. It's a new year, it's a new season of the PixelPlay Podcast. We are now starting our 4th year of doing this. Thank you so much for joining us. We are your weekly gaming podcast. We get together to talk about everything video games. If you like that, click subscribe. If you don't like it, subscribe anyways. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. Do it anyways. We'd appreciate it. With that being said, I am one of your co-hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, currently undergoing technical difficulties. If you're listening to us audio, video, you know exactly what's going on. I'm also joined by my co-host, Adam, at CS Radical, and Chris, at Jin and Chris. 50-50 chance, Chris, you got it wrong.
I got it wrong. I can't, I don't understand how, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. We post episodes every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, wherever you get your podcasts, or on youtube.com/pixelplaypodcast. Find us there. See our gorgeous faces as we do this every week. With that being said...
And one frozen one.
It's still a gorgeous face, even if it's not moving.
It is a great face.
He's got a point.
With gentlemen, how are you guys doing? How are your holidays? What have you guys been playing for the last couple weeks?
Oh my god, what a busy year. I feel, who should go? Do we want the brunt of the weight at the beginning or at the end? Because I'm not sure, because I have way too much to talk about. We'll do like a little Oreo. We'll do a double stuffed Oreo. We'll get Chris. We'll let you come in with the creamy center, and then I'll wrap it up on the top.
Nice.
Don't cut that a different way. Don't cut that a different way.
I am already in the middle, so.
Chris?
All right. Well, it's been a lot because December was interesting. Obviously, I went away, got married. The holidays happened.
This is the first time hearing
of
this.
things happened. What? Since when? But yeah, it was normally I have a self goal of 6 games a month, which is already pretty high to aim for, but I mean that includes really small games. And December was bad. I only beat I think 2 in total. It was the only month I really dropped the ball. But I mean it was a lot going on, so what are you gonna do, right? But then after the holidays were over, it was like, cool, this is Chris's time. Let's go play some video games. And I have played so many freaking games. And then there was a Steam winter sale, and I am awful when it comes to Steam, so my backlog kind of grew right at the end of the year. PlayStation had a sale. I don't know if I actually grabbed anything with that. No, not really. Nintendo, I don't know. It was sales all over the place. So first thing I ended up doing, which was supposed to be not something I would do, I caved and I ended up buying a Steam Deck OLED. So I didn't even buy a game. I just went straight hard and bought an upgraded version of the Steam Deck. Sold my old one.
You've literally had the Steam Deck for 6 months.
It came out, well, I've had it for over a year, but yeah, it's like a year and a half old, and they've already got the OLED version. They're going like the Nintendo Switch route, but turned up to 300% speed, because they're just like, hey, you want a Steam Deck? Here you go. Just kidding. You want an upgraded one? Here you go. So yeah, I've been playing a fair bit on the Steam Deck OLED. It is, oh my gosh, it really should be if you take the Steam Deck first version, it's like what you wish it would have been at launch. The OLED is exactly that. The battery is significantly improved, which a lot of people had an issue with. And it's an OLED screen with really tiny bezels, so it looks beautiful. I've been just staring and playing games. So many games on there. And then to celebrate buying that, I did something shameful, which was buy Sonic Superstars. I bought it. I did not. It was on sale for 40% off, which already shows how desperate Sega was with a game that was a month and a bit old. That's the only game I've technically beaten. That was a delight. I loved that game, but I wasn't supposed to pay it. Even at 40% off, it was $40 something, I think. It was still way too high for what the 3.5 hours or 5 hours I got out of it. That's not the game I want to really focus on, though, because I did play a bunch of other games too. Cyberpunk more, which I'm loving. A couple other games already in my backlog. But the main game that I also picked up in the Steam Winter Sale that I would love to talk about, because it's one that I was saying I've been wanting to pick up for a while, was RoboCop Rogue City.
Yeah.
Oh my God. If you like the original first two, not the third one that doesn't exist, RoboCop movies, you will love this freaking game. They did not change anything. They took hey, let's just make another movie that either takes place after the second movie or between the first and two. I don't know. but it just like jumps right in to that like corny 80s action RoboCop like nature. It's first person, but like when you like normally when you're in first person shooters and you like hold right click on the mouse or you like left trigger L2, whatever you want to call it. Normally that's when you would aim right with the weapon. And you'd actually look down the sights. When you do it in this, it goes into the first person RoboCop mode, like where everything gets that like green scan lines over and it highlights people, which if anybody's watching the video can see that happening now. Oh my God, is that so satisfying? Because in the movies, whenever it showed him first person, it always did that. So now it's kind of like you're walking around as RoboCop, but now you're aiming and it's actually highlighting things around and like pointing them out because you're freaking RoboCop. Oh my God. Things are like everything explodes. You shoot at people behind walls. You tear through those walls to still murder people like I guess a RoboCop would do. It is so good. And the story is already so ridiculous. It's like this, you know, a version of Detroit that doesn't really exist, but existed in the RoboCop movies. So everybody is addicted to a drug called Nuke from RoboCop 2. And oh, it's just everything I've wanted. Like, it's not going to be where you go in and you're like, wow, this is the greatest game ever made. It's not even a AAA game, technically. It's like an A or a AA game. I can't remember how all of that kind of works. But it's from a studio that when I looked at their previous games, they did like Ambulance Simulator and stuff like that. So this was definitely a risk.
Yeah, they definitely took a step differently to what they used to do.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there is some technical issues with it on PC. I've actually had it where the game's crashed on me like mid-level. And it is pretty tough to get running. You can tell they definitely relied on DLS, that setting where it upscales and everything a lot to get it going. When you try and run the game normally, even with a good graphics card and all that kind of stuff, you're getting like 30 frames per second, like even in just the main menu on the title screen. But then you turn on DLSS and you get up to like 90 frames per second, and you can barely tell that it's actually being upscaled versus like native resolution and stuff. So they really were focusing on that, and it is amazing. But tech wise, obviously, you know, having a couple crashes here and there is not great. That's my only gripe with it. But for a studio that this is their first like outing for this type of game and everything like that, like kudos to them. Like if they can just patch out obviously the game crashing, this is going to be probably one of my favorite games of last year. It's silly fun. It's kind of gory. There's in the RoboCop movies, there always seemed to be a guy who got like shot in his junk, and like they put an achievement in the game to do that to a random thug, and it's amazing. Like they know who their audience was, and they did not hold back. They just went straight, here's this like RoboCop trashing an arcade, trying to take out drug dealers who were giving drugs to little kids, like RoboCop just mauling everyone. And that's like a level in the game, but with the RoboCop theme playing over soft piano. Like I don't know how to describe this, but it is amazing. It is everything, if you're a RoboCop fan, you could have ever wanted. If you've seen the first two RoboCop movies in the 80s and you were like, oh, that's kind of 80s, I don't like that, do not pick up this game. They did not modernize it for like modern like Detroit or anything like that. It is like the dystopian 80s Detroit and characters that you know and love from the franchise. So highly suggest it if you like first person shooters or RoboCop. If you really don't like either of those two things, there's not going to be much else here for you. But I'm very excited to play more of it. I'm just kind of waiting for a patch so I don't keep losing my progress during a crash, because I just want to get in there and kill people to the RoboCop theme, you know, for justice, like for justice,
yeah,
of course. Yes. Yeah, that's what I've been up to. What about you, Adam?
Well, as the resident double stuff here, I play probably double the amount of games as all of you, because I finished a buttload of stuff. So obviously, as I said on our last episode, I expected to finish all of Cyberpunk by the time that we came back. That is true. Literally, 69 hours of completion is how I ended both the base game and Phantom Liberty. I basically rehash everything that I said previously when I was talking about it. You know, I think while I love the gameplay that's there, I do love, you know, going back and doing all the side missions in there. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I still think the characters and the world are what sell me rather than the story. The story is at best, I would say, okay. I think Phantom Liberty did a little better than the base game, but I would still say that a lot of it still felt very, very cliche. It didn't feel like I was getting anything too different. It was more just the vibes were different, and some of the different ideas that they tried in terms of the level design and the combat that you had throughout the two portions of the games were really what kind of sold it. I think that this game also does show me that even when a open world game is at its best, I still think worlds need to be toned down in size, because I still think that even with the fast travel, the map is just too damn big. Especially once you start doing missions out in the Nomad world, depending on how, because I'm assuming maybe if you start as a Nomad, maybe you start out there. But like as someone who started Corpo, the second you go out into the Nomad area of the map, there's way too much dead area. And I know that's kind of what the area should be, but it's also not a very riveting thing in terms of gameplay. Just driving for basically 4 kilometers of nothing. Not exactly a great sell, but it is what it is. But like, I loved every second that I had in it, despite there were like moments where it does feel a little bit slow or a little like you're just kind of killing time. I did pretty much complete everything there was to complete into it. I think most of my whenever you hit the pause screen, it shows you those 3 things at the top. Almost all 3 of them were fully completed. So I definitely spent like as much time as I really could without going too crazy in there. And I really did come out like really happy about it. I mean, for those who want to know what my decisions were without me spoiling it, I decided to get in the basilisk and ride off with my nomad friends into the desert. And then I also launched a package into space. So that for Chris, he has no idea what the hell I just said. But if you have played through the vanilla and Phantom Liberty, you know pretty much roughly what I did. And it was great. Like, I have definitely a number of characters that I'm really into, like both Judy and Phantom I really like a lot. Jackie, was a great starting point, and obviously as the game progresses, Keanu Reeves' character Johnny Silverhand just gets better and better and better. I also like his Kaylan, what's his guitar buddy? Is it Carrie, I think?
Carrie, yep.
Yeah, like he was fantastic. Like, there's a lot of little fun stuff throughout, and some of the cameos. Chris, have you come across any cameos in Cyberpunk yet that you recognize?
No, but I do know of one, Alana Pierce. I know about hers. Yeah,
but there's at least 2 more pretty big streamers / YouTubers that I've caught in there, and then there's one, as I said, on our last show, that there's one that actually references a game that I was unbelievably happy. Whenever you get the mission where you have to start helping a taxi company, Chris, that's the point. You'll see a pretty big cameo. But apart from that, but there was a lot of fun stuff in there, and I genuinely am happy that I waited until this 2.0 update with Phantom Liberty so that I could get a much better experience, because had I played this game in the state that it was at launch, I don't think I would have rated it remotely as well. I'm still putting this around like the 4.5 out of 6 range, because I still think that the map was way too large. There was a lot of dead space in there, not actual like horror game dead space, just a lot of nothing. But I ended up enjoying my time a lot with it, and it's something that I'm glad that A, CD Projekt Red was able to recover, and B, was still something that I was able to find a pretty high level of enjoyment in. After that...
No, I'm just going to quickly pause. I called it. Told you Cyberpunk was amazing. Glad you finally played through it.
I never said it was going to be garbage.
I'm going to have to roll the tape, because I'm pretty sure there were several times.
No, I might have said it was garbage. Because it was. That's why we all got refunds on PlayStation.
I think also Adam was trolling you for about 2 straight years, Kaylan.
That doesn't sound like
everybody
Adam
knows
at
The
all.
Last of Us 2 is the most overrated game ever. But alas,
poor Kaylan.
Well, no.
I just realized you can't see my facial expressions. I just feel like I forgot you can't see.
Honestly, I just assumed the one that we're currently looking at makes sense. For those listening on audio, Kaylan, for whatever reason, Discord's being rude, and Kaylan is just not allowed to have video, apparently, so it freezes after 5 seconds. So we just decided he would just do a really angry, like, rage face, and then that was going to be the freeze frame, and that's what we're stuck with, and now it works.
Check it out on youtube.com/PixelPlayPodcast.
Oh, yeah.
While you're there, subscribe.
Content.
Always be closing.
Yeah, but other than that, like, I did a bunch of small things afterwards. I've not, because you can't really complete fighting games per se, but I've Did a good amount of time in both Guilty Gear Strive finally and D&D Duel, or DNF Duel, not D&D Duel. That'd be pretty weird if Arc
Duel.
System Works made a Dungeons and Dragons fighting game. No, it's Dungeon and Fighter. That's what I meant. Both of them are made by Arc Systems Works. And again, like I've set it up many times on the show, they are the best fighting game company in the world as far as I'm concerned. So both of those games are fantastic. Epic was nice enough to give one of them for free in DNF Duel. Too late now for anybody listening to this show, but for free, fantastic fucking game. And then Guilty Gear Strive, I've been waiting for a long time to get my hands on. It's fantastic. It's what I've always loved in a 2.5D fighter essentially now. And just having a solid anime style fighting game is great. So that's that. Then I went through 2 quick games. I don't know if either of you have heard of this one. It's called Cat Quest.
Yes, I've heard of that one.
That one, basically like a top-down, like sort of like Zelda-style fighting, similar to, I guess, maybe like even Tunic in a way, if it's something that's more recent. It's very much just keep grinding until your level's high enough that you can go take on the major parts of the game, and that was it. So it was nothing too special. I think the vibe is just more what's nice about it. The actual like interesting design choice that they made, that you're basically fighting over like an Atlas style map as you go across the game. The combat system is pretty basic. It was perfectly serviceable for an indie game. The amount of cat puns is always fantastic. I was very happy with the amount of times that somebody said, "You got to be kidding me," you know, just a little chuckle here and there. That was fun. I'd say that was a solid 4 out of 6. Pretty like for what it was. You can't ask for much more. I then played the not as great 13 remake, the old PlayStation 2 like cell shaded first person shooter that was like a spy game.
I think it's pronounced XZ.
I remember when it launched, people said not too nice things about it. When I did play it, I was like, it's fine. They didn't really fix any of the problems with the PS2 game, but it's fine. It's a solid literal right in the middle of a scorecard. It's a 3 out of 6. I mean, it's a nice like for $5 too. That's how I bought it. I bought it for $5. I'm like, okay, for $5, yeah, that's serviceable. I'll take a 5 to 6 hour experience. And I mean, it is still kind of cool with because it was one of the early games that did like the close up of you like headshotting somebody. So if you hit somebody with a bow and arrow, you see the close up of the arrow like sink right into his eye socket or whatever. So like, for that time, it was kind of cool. But like nowadays, we have Sniper Elite, which does it better. So. But the last thing that I want to talk about, and this is the big one, I'm very upset that I didn't pull the trigger and buy this when it was still 2023. Excuse me. Wow, that just crept up on me.
Out of nowhere.
My actual game of the year for 2023 would have been American Arcadia, which I already thought good things about when I think it was Summer Game Fest that this trailer came out on. I can't quite remember. I'm pretty sure it was that. But
what game is this?
So American Arcadia is essentially, like, the best way I can explain it is it's like a side-scrolling platformer. It does have some first-person sections as you switch between another character, but it's basically a game about you being trapped in a Truman-style show setup. So you're trapped in this city of like 20,000-ish people or whatever it is, where it's literally like a live streamed show that's been running since like the 80s. And it's now in present day where it's basically like a live streaming show that nobody knows on the inside that they're part of a show. And you get notified that if you don't escape, they're going to kill you because you are literally the most boring person in the show and no one watches you. So they're trying to cut costs, and the only way they can really do it without, obviously exposing hundreds, if not thousands of people that they've been living a lie their entire lives is to just kill them. So it ends up turning into a survival thing where it's you and the person on the outside trying to help you get you out. And it's a very interesting concept as a game because I haven't really seen anything like that before. And the way that it's done, the platforming sections, there's actually some pretty good puzzling in it that I found at points me going, am I stupid? Am I just actually like incapable of figuring out this answer? And then finally coming up to it and be like, oh, okay, that's pretty genius. That's pretty clever. And then the voice acting is solid. Yuri Lowenthal, who plays Peter Parker in the Spider-Man games, is the main character Trevor in this, which took me half a second before his first like angry yell was like, oh, that's Yosuke from Persona 4. That's Yuri Lowenthal. Okay, we're good. And I'm glad that they got like, because I don't know if any of the other, because I didn't actually check the full voice cast because I didn't recognize anybody else, but I was pretty impressed to see that a smaller game like this was able to get him because he's a pretty well-known voice actor these days. But it's honestly like the voice acting as a whole for everybody is very well done. Like you have obviously, you know, people on the outside who are being very posh and corporate. You have like the person who you saw, if you're watching the video version, you just saw on screen a second ago, that's like the show host that really feels just like, if anybody remembers Big Brother, feels like that the chick that used to host the show there. And just like that very like mid completely deadpan, like sort of like telling you what's going on in the show and be like, oh, looks like that person's going to be in a world of hurt next time they meet. And it's just like the very like fake sort of host voice, which was great. And again, like the gameplay, it doesn't take too long to go through. I want to say it was maybe 6 to 8 hours at most. I think I got through it. And all of it, like I'd never felt at any point that I was in like a dead spot or I didn't feel like there was something that was too hard. There were a couple points that I kept resetting, but it was only because I wasn't quite thinking about the solution they wanted to do. And it just took a second to be, oh, that's what you're expecting me to do. Okay, that makes sense. Because there's a couple of puzzles where they give you a bunch of different methods and they really only want you to pick one. So if you keep trying other ones, you just keep intentionally putting yourself into a situation where you're going to get into a fail state. So it takes you a second to realize, oh, I'm not supposed to do this thing just because you give it to me. Cool. But the one thing that I will say that put this game over the edge is that unlike a lot of games, and I echo what Yahtzee, aka, well, it used to be zero punctuation, but now it's fully ramblomatic on Second Wind since they moved from The Escapist. Like he talked about the same thing that I'm going to say here is that it's nice to have a game that actually feels like it properly ended. Like you actually got a satisfying ending that isn't like an open world game where they try to have a ho-hum ending so they can still put you back in the open world after so you can still have a reason to keep doing stuff. Or in the case of a live service game where there's never truly an ending, it's more like an arc ends to go to the next thing. This game, you feel like, okay, this guy's story is done. There's no reason to go back to this. And the way that they also do it, too, is different than what you would expect to. I won't say how, because I expect people to go and give this game a shot, because you should. It's my game of the year for 2023 now. But it has a way of ending the game that, you know, it actually doesn't make you go, oh, it's just another one of these endings. It's like, there's nothing cliche about it. It actually, the second that it ends, I went, oh, shit, I was not expecting that to happen. Okay, cool.
Like time travel.
And I wish. But no, like I was legitimately impressed by how much I love this game. I knew from conceptual basis I was going to like it. I did not realize like how much though in the end I was going to love it. Everything I loved about the characters, the puzzles, the storytelling, the atmosphere, the vibes, everything clicks. And it's one of those games that, because it's also not too expensive, I think its main full price on Steam is like less than $25 Canadian. So it's relatively affordable, and I'm sure at some point it'll be on sale for 30-40% off, and that'll be more than a good enough price for it. And maybe even drops on Game Pass at some point, I don't know, but it's definitely a game that I suggest anybody to take a crack at, because I think it really is a game that I think anyone could get into. I don't think it's really limited to being like, oh, if you're only into this, you'll like it. I think this is a game that literally any gamer can enjoy. So it is my last 6 out of 6 for 2023 until we I mean, this is basically going to be the Jin and Chris classic for 2024 unless something else comes along, because at this point this would have been my game of the year last year, so I think I already have one of my awards possibly penciled in for the end of this year now.
Nice. Love to hear it. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. As I played a game over the holidays that just skyrocketed on my list, and had I played it sooner, would have been in my top 3, if not my number 1 game, and that is Mario Wonder. So, funny story. I bought this game for my brother-in-law for Christmas, and I bought it secondhand because I mean I didn't have the budget to buy it new. And so I'm sitting there, and I was talking with my friends. I'm like, yeah, I bought him like the Mario Switch secondhand, you know, and they're like, or Mario Wonder secondhand. They're like, oh, so it's like open. I'm like, yeah, open as in like you can get the game and play it. And I'm like, yeah. So I played it before I gave it to him. What a game that is. Like, honestly, if you are a Mario fan, this is probably the best Mario that we've had. I don't know, like I would say this is one of, if not the best Mario games, especially the 2D Marios. Like this is up there as going to be a classic. So from a gameplay perspective, this feels like Super Mario World, like SNES Super Mario World. It feels exactly like that. You've got an open world. You've got different levels you go to, but there's secrets and surprises in each side of every level. It's your standard Mario. It feels like like a Super Mario World game. It doesn't have that like airy sort of glidey controls that the Super Mario Wii U had. Like this feels tight. But the cool thing that they have is it's not like a linear game where it's go one way and then you can't go back or you're stuck on a timer. Like there's no timer on these levels. So you can spend an hour on a level if you wanted to. And each level has its basic get to the end of the level, whatever, cool, you're good. But then there's also these seeds in the world, and I think every world has one, at least one, where you go in and it has some sort of twist or change on the game. So like I had one that was really cool where I was playing a water level and it was half submerged. So like think of like a typical water level where you've got like the water part, and then if you jump up in the air, like you're not in the water. Well, you get the seed and it inverts, and suddenly the water part is the air part, and like you drop down, and then the air part is the water part. It just changes it like those kind of subtle ways. So each level has a way that it kind of, I mean, not to make the pun, but like flips it on its head and does something unique. And so I think it's really cool. It is one of my favorite games. I've been burning through it and I've been trying very hard not to, because I have a flight coming up and I plan on just binging this the entire time. Like I said, this is up there with Super Mario World. This is up there with N64 Mario. Like it is one of the best, and I think will be a classic Mario that is to be remembered. So yeah, if you are on the fence, if you haven't played a Mario game in a while, like this is the one, especially if you were a big fan of the old SNES games. So yeah, I don't know. Have you guys played the Super Mario Wonder yet, or Mario Wonder?
Oh yeah, I've fully completed it, like all secret levels, the super hard final level. I've done the whole thing. It was amazing.
Right, and like you can tell me, like, is my assumption or like the way I'm describing it right, or do you have like a different opinion?
Yeah, 100%. The what I've said to people is this is the best Mario game since like Super Mario World, and this actually feels like a sequel to the like SNES games, just with upgraded graphics, like a new art style, but feels like the Super Nintendo Mario
Successor.
games. Yeah, because again, I completely agree with you that the like new Super Mario Brothers or new Super Mario's Wii or whatever, they felt floaty. They didn't feel like a Mario game. There was something wrong with the controls, where this feels exactly like it should. So yeah, 100%.
Good. I'm glad that like I'm not just going out in left field here. And then the other one that I've been playing is Assassin's Creed Mirage, and once again, really like that game. I really like the setting of Baghdad and kind of that old Assassin's Creed feel. Game looks incredible. Game runs incredibly. I was chatting with Chris in our Discord channel. You can find that on link tr.ee/pixelplaypodcast. I was kind of talking with him in there that for me, I'm liking the game, but I'm not a big fan of the controls. I find that the controls are weird. They don't like, it feels very much like an old Assassin's Creed game, with the exception of the controls and the heavy reliance on the shoulder buttons for actions.
Yeah,
I'm not used to that. I tried building my own little configuration and it didn't quite work, but from a gameplay perspective, it feels like Assassin's Creed. I love going in and doing stealth missions and just sneaking around and being all stabby, not being a brawler like you have been in the last few Assassin's Creeds. Like, I don't want to get in fights. I look at guys and I'm like, I don't want to fight you. I'm just going to hide over here, be sneaky. So it's a lot of fun. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So, and that's what I've been playing. I had a very different experience than you guys. I was home with my son and stuff, and so didn't get as much chance to game. But I did get a PlayStation Portal as well, and I've been playing on that. I'm going to be posting a video on Friday talking about my thoughts on that and whether or not you should be buying one in 2024. Surprise, it may not be the answer that you think it is. So, yeah.
Yeah, the answer is going to be you should buy two of them.
You got two hands.
Oh, got a point.
No, you got to be able to play one with your feet.
Well, I mean, that's just a pro gamer move right there. With that being said, I wanted to jump in. I know we're like half an hour into this episode at least.
Look, we had 2 weeks off. We had lots of time to play.
That's true. That's true. But I want to jump into this week's news. One of the big news stories that came out already this year is a lot of rumors and speculations going about that Microsoft is going to be launching some of, if not many, of its exclusives onto its competitor consoles. So there's rumors that things like Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, even maybe Starfield is going to be coming to PlayStation and the Nintendo Switch too. I just wanted to thought we could kind of talk about that. Do we think that this is going to occur? Is this going to be a good move for Microsoft? What does this mean for Xbox? What does this mean for Game Pass? So I think maybe the best way to start is do you guys think that Xbox is going to launch its exclusives onto PlayStation and Nintendo?
Adam, you go ahead. You go ahead, man.
I think the answer is yes, but see, when you put the 3 examples out there, I could see Hi-Fi Rush. I could even see Sea of Thieves because as a live service game, you want as many users as possible. Starfield, I don't know if that's one they do, just because I feel like in the same way that, we've seen with Sony putting some stuff on PC is a different story because it's its own different ecosystem. You're not worrying about your opponent in Xbox with Steam because, people are not going to spend nearly the amount of money that they're going to have to spend to be able to run Spider-Man or Horizon or Zero Dawn on their PC, as we've seen with some of the tech specs of those. But with Starfield, I can't imagine them putting it on, it would have to be PlayStation, because if they put it on PC, it already exists on PC because it's on their Xbox app. So the only other way it could be on something else would be PlayStation. And if I'm being honest, Starfield, they kind of need to stay on their console as being their console exclusive because you still need something to give people a reason to buy your console. In the same way of Sony putting Spider-Man Miles Morales on Steam doesn't really stop people from buying PlayStations, because if they were going to play a game on Steam, it's because they've already spent the tons of money on a PC. They probably can afford to also get a PlayStation, whereas you're not gonna, if you own one console, you're probably not gonna have the money to go and buy a new PC. I certainly can't right now. That's why I have consoles at this point that are being bought rather than a brand new PC, because Lord knows I can't find $2,000 right now. But
in this economy,
no, certainly not. I think at this point, Hi-Fi Rush makes perfect sense to be on both too, because it's a game that excuse me, I don't know why my speaking voice, it's like I just did karaoke 2 weeks ago. I don't God damn. I don't know what the issue would be with that game, because it's not something that we presume is going to be, a consistent IP that they keep making new games of. I'm pretty sure Hi-Fi Rush is a one-off. So already having it out as a shadow drop for a year now, I think I would have no issue putting that on another console. If they really wanted to put a major exclusive, let's say for Sony's example, Horizon Zero Dawn, I think now you could make a case if you wanted to put that on Xbox, now's the time that you could put Zero Dawn on there, because it's been a pretty considerable large amount of time. Most people that are going to have bought that game on your console have now bought it. Whereas in the case of a Starfield for Xbox, that still could sell you systems right now. I wouldn't potentially move that on any other platform at this point until you're for certain. If the game has had at least another re-release at some point, not even a Game of the Year edition, but another re-release of a major update or another console version, that's a no-brainer. But I think for Starfield, I would say minimum 3 years. That'd be my opinion. So I think Xbox probably will do this, and the reason for this is, my long way of getting to this answer is they aren't really looking like they're in the business of selling consoles so much as they're looking to sell Game Pass. So by putting Game Pass on more things or putting more games on other things, it just keeps more people to look at what they're doing with their product, which in this point is Game Pass, especially if we see it starting to move on to other devices. I keep waiting to see when they're officially going to have that TV stick that they've been talking about for a while that is literally just the straight up streaming service of running it. Because I know does some smart TVs have it now, I think
some Samsungs do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's starting to roll out on that front. So it seems like at some point down the road, they're getting into an area where they're not nearly as concerned about selling consoles. So I think for them, it makes a lot of sense. I think if we were talking other companies like Sony and Nintendo, that's a whole different conversation. But for them, I mean, I could see any game potentially getting put on another service. I think there are certain ones that they'll still hold back. I mean, who could imagine seeing Halo on a PlayStation console, right? But I think there are some cases where if it's not like their biggest IP and it's something that also they feel like they've gotten the most out of on their own ecosystem, yeah, I could see them doing it.
There just a caveat, there is some talk and there is some rumors that like some games are going to be day and date on Xbox and PlayStation, like some Bethesda games, some Activision games. Like there's a theory that like Blade is going to be day and date like on both consoles and stuff. So like there's a conversation being had.
Some of those make sense too. Like if it's Blade, that makes perfect sense because with fitting in with the ecosystem for Spider, like Marvel games, like you want the Sony fans getting that. Now, granted, you would also like just like the Sony fans to also buy another Xbox, but that may also not be as possible. So maybe putting that game on multiple systems maybe is better to their advantage of being like, hey, if you put a day one on Game Pass, it's like, hey, but if you have our console on our service, you don't have to pay nearly as much. But hey, if we put it on PlayStation, we make a bigger considerable sum on each game sale there too. So who knows? It's a bit of both, but like I don't see, especially with like Activision Blizzard now, like do you really think they're not going to put every Call of Duty game they put on every single possible system they can? Like I think there are some cases where they will still stick to that.
Yeah, 100%. I think with Call of Duty, they pretty much have to. I think that was part of the deal even. So, and when it comes to me, I can definitely see most of this too. I agree with a lot of what Adam said, especially when it comes to the Switch. Steam, like Xbox doesn't have as many exclusives when you think about it if you include PC already, because basically every Xbox title is day one release on Steam as well. Starfield is on there, Halo's on there, even Halo Infinite, like all of it is on there on day one, right? I think only for some reason Minecraft hasn't been brought to Steam. I don't know why they're holding that one specifically back, but all the other ones are already on there. So PC already big part of it. I get it. And if this leak has anything to do with that, it's like, yeah, no big deal. We already knew that. When it comes to the Switch, Xbox and Nintendo already have, like the Switch already have a really good relationship because like not just Minecraft, which is on everything, but like Ori and the Will of the Wisps and Ori and the Blind Forest, which are Xbox exclusives, are also on the Switch. Like you can just get them. They started Cuphead, I think, was Xbox. I don't know if it wasn't exclusive, but they had something to do with it at first. And it ended up then on Switch, and then later on came to PlayStation. So Switch and Xbox, like they've already been kind of hugging it out for a while already, and kind of Xbox has been giving some exclusives over to Nintendo with that, including things like Banjo and Kazooie and stuff coming to Smash Brothers and whatnot. Like that was a big deal because that's a Rare property. It was owned by Microsoft. GoldenEye releasing in Game Pass, and then them making a deal with Nintendo that GoldenEye would also be on Nintendo Switch Online. Like they've been already doing so much together for so long that anything, if it was to release, and it wouldn't be anything big, it would definitely be Hi-Fi Rush, let's be honest, releasing on Switch. And I can 100% see that because it's not like people who have an Xbox might get a Switch as their second console. Like the things don't really compete. They really just complement each other. So I don't think Xbox has ever been worried there. If they could put Game Pass on the Switch, they would have already done it. Like Xbox would have put xCloud or whatever on there years ago. PlayStation, that is the one and only console where I agree with Adam. It gets interesting because do I think they'd put Starfield on there? I really don't think so, because it is kind of that thing keeping the PlayStation and the Xbox, where most people, like Adam said, usually you just buy one console or the other. It's rare that people do get two, or if they do, they don't really use both consoles for buying AAA games or getting games, right? I don't know if I could see Starfield and stuff getting put on there. It would be hard for me to even see certain other exclusives that have been around for a while. Could I see Gears 5 being put on PlayStation? I don't think so. Like, I don't see those Xbox titles being put on there, because it's kind of Microsoft's identity that they've got this like, hey, come to Xbox if you want this. You only can get it on our console, only on our Game Pass. If you're on PlayStation, you can't get these things, because I think they know. Yeah, there are some people that, may still get an Xbox instead for Game Pass if they see Gears and stuff, but Gears 5 isn't going to release at like $80 or something. It's going to be $25 or $30, I assume, if they ever release that. So it's not going to convince people like, oh, I should stop playing my PlayStation now because I finally tried Gears 5. I got to get Game Pass. Like, it's not really going to be something I would see being a good marketing move. Certain games like Hi-Fi Rush, smaller ones like that, sure, because again, they're already cheaper to begin with, and they're not really system sellers. They're just nice to haves in a way. But yeah, like I can't see too many exclusives again being brought over to PlayStation. I think that just because the two consoles are competing so head to head compared to everything else, that it wouldn't be something we would see. It's kind of like how PlayStation did release MLB The Show on Xbox. That's like one of the few times where it's like, yeah, that makes sense. No one's buying just a PS5 to get MLB The Show every year. They are,
and also
fine
there's MLB saying, hey, we want more money, so go put it on more platforms, and we're going to take the license from you.
Yeah, it was kind of forced as opposed to like volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sure it might even be similar with the Marvel property being like, no, you put this on as many things as we want, because it's like, you think Disney's going to say, yeah, just put it on one platform, it's fine. I'm pretty sure there might be something on their end also going, hey, I know that it's your studio making this, but make sure you put this out to as many people as possible so we get a nice big royalty check.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think like
that's the way I see it.
For me, like it's kind of confusing because like I think it could happen, and if it does, I think this is part of a broader, like an enormous shift on Xbox. Because on the one hand, I'd say like if Xbox is looking to stay as they currently are, as a traditional console system with Game Pass being their flagship thing that they sell, I don't think it makes sense to go to other consoles. Maybe you get the Nintendo Switch crowd because you get the kids who are going from their first. And let's be real, Nintendo is really sort of that gateway console, and you're trying to get in there. I can see them putting it there so that kids kind of go from Nintendo to Xbox, but I don't see it going to PlayStation, because the problem is that the big seller for Xbox isn't its games of itself. No one's buying, well, I did, but like nobody's buying an Xbox to play one game or to like play games on Xbox. They're buying it for Game Pass. I've had my Xbox for, almost 6 months now. I've not bought a single game. I just buy Game Pass, and they've got that revenue. Even though it's not my primary console, I'm not playing it every day, I still have Game Pass because it's such a great deal on there. But so like the problem is that like they don't have a lot of exclusives already that they could start giving some away. Like if I think of Xbox, I think of Starfield, Hi-Fi Rush, Forza Motorsports, Sea of Thieves. I guess it's not my game, but like that's kind of it. Really, like I'm not thinking of a lot of games that are like, oh man, I need to get it. And if they make those games available to PlayStation, then those PlayStation fanboys are not going to have a reason to go to Xbox. They're like, well, I can get the cream of the crop of Xbox on the PlayStation. And so I'm not going to go and buy Game Pass. I'm not going to go buy an Xbox and start paying for Game Pass, because the few games I want to play, I can just play on my PlayStation. And then that kind of diminishes them having fewer and fewer people who are signing up for Game Pass. The flip side is, do I see them bringing Game Pass to PlayStation? I can't imagine a world where PlayStation is cool with having Game Pass on their console. It would just eat up so much of their revenue by just saying, hey, instead of buying all these games that you would get on PlayStation, just get Game Pass and you don't have to buy them. Like that would eat into their revenue so much that I can't see PlayStation allowing that to happen. So what this means for me, and this is going to kind of lead into my second question, is that like maybe this is the harbinger of Xbox getting out of consoles. Maybe they become a third-party studio, like a third-party publisher, right? So they're out of Xbox. They have Game Pass in the same way that you have Ubisoft. Ubisoft. What is the Ubisoft one? There's like the Ubisoft subscription.
Plus or Connect or something?
Yeah, whatever. There's that one, and then I think it's EA has one too, right?
EA Live.
Yeah.
EA Live. Yes.
EA Play.
EA Play.
EA Play. Sorry, which is
which
technically
I can see,
part
like,
of Game Pass.
Yeah, so I could see Xbox getting out of like, hey, we don't make consoles anymore. The Xbox is done. We're gonna have this online platform that you can come in, play our games, or you can buy them through PlayStation. I could see PlayStation maybe then allowing that to happen, but like I said, it still kind of eats into the revenue by having all those third parties. So unless Xbox moves away from doing third party games on their Game Pass and it just becomes Xbox Studios, I could see that. So like I wonder if this is kind of the end of Xbox and the start of them being a third party publisher that Microsoft or that PlayStation would want to work with. I mean, they're building up the amount of studios that they need to, that they do. And let's be honest, console sales really don't sell for profit, right? The money comes in making the revenue. I don't know a lot of people who are buying Xbox games, so it's really just the Game Pass. And if you don't need the console to sell a Game Pass, maybe that's where they're going. Like, what do you think? Do you guys think that Microsoft is going to become a third party publisher and we're done with the first party status of Xbox?
So here's a conversation that I ironically had like over the weekend. Somebody asked me, "Hey, like you obviously have both consoles. You know, what would you say like you're using as like where you're purchasing most of your games on?" And I said, if I'm being completely honest, all of my games get purchased on PlayStation, and whatever I play on Xbox comes from Game Pass. And the only game that I ever technically purchased for Xbox was Forza Horizon because it came with the Xbox that I purchased. So that's like the closest thing I can say to buying a game on Xbox, because everything else has always come through Game Pass. I don't know what it would look like right now if this was the last console and they said, you know what, we're just going to run Game Pass. We're going to work a deal with Sony, so we put Game Pass on their platform. We become the Netflix of video games. I don't know what that looks like from a business perspective, because my initial thought is, well, what does that do to Sony? Like, sure, Sony can keep all their first-party titles on their own console, and you still buy a full price. But whatever Microsoft's doing and whatever they bring in terms of the indie developing scene, you know, that gets there. How much of a cut does PlayStation get from that? To which you go, well, shit, like, if people aren't buying as much of our stuff now on our store, instead they're getting from Game Pass, like, is this really something in our best interest to have? And that's where I kind of like am at this weird crossroads, because it feels like Xbox almost knows that it should be better off not being in the console game anymore. But you also go, but then what else would they do? Because I don't think PlayStation would want them on their console either, because I feel like it would eat way too much into their profit margin. So like, the only way this would possibly work is if, God forbid, Microsoft just bought Sony. And I don't want that as much as it would like make sense in the end. I don't particularly want that route, because you want more competition. Because if it just came down to Sony and Nintendo, it's not really a competition anymore, because it's literally Sony. The PlayStation console is literally the only console of its kind. Nintendo is essentially its own kind. Steam Deck is sort of a Switch, but it's really not. Like, it's two completely different markets at that point.
Yeah.
Like, they're both the same thing, except one isn't making like their own games, and the other is also like $500 cheaper. So so it's a little different, in the same way that the PC market isn't the same as the console market. It just isn't. So I don't want this to happen in the only way that I think it will work. Is it still possible that Sony could just say, yeah, if you guys want to put Game Pass on there and you guys aren't making a console anymore, yeah, come right on in. Like, we'll take, you know, extra stuff in our library that just make sure that we're the only console people buy. I'm sure there would be an advantage in terms of, actually, that would probably be the worst case scenario, because if that's the only console left, they could charge not, you know, losing money on consoles anymore. So we could suddenly see the PlayStation 6, if, say, the normal cost of it being like, let's say $550 or $600 Canadian, they can now go, fuck you guys, you're going to pay $800 on this now. And then we'll
I've always said, like, I don't want Xbox. Like, as much as I'm a PlayStation fanboy, the best thing for PlayStation is a healthy and competitive Xbox. Like,
yeah,
they are not good when they're in the lead. Like, they get very arrogant and very fast, and they need.
And that's why I'm at the point of going, I pray to God that Xbox isn't leaning into the no more console market, because then that means that us as a market are going to get fucked by this. in terms of how much we're going to pay. Because I guarantee you at that point, console prices will go up, game prices will go up, because who else are you going to go to?
Yeah. Well, if you look at Nintendo doesn't drop their prices at all. So like that's the problem. So
there's only two ways I guess they're their own market.
Yeah. There's only two ways.
Sony and Xbox have to still be nice because you could just jump ship at any point.
I think that there's only two ways that this goes. Either Sony becomes a walled off garden and they're like, you can get Game Pass everywhere but PlayStation, or like I said, Game Pass becomes a first party studio service and you lose a lot of that third party stuff. You're not going to see, the Segas and the like the Atlas games and everything on Game Pass. Those are going to be strictly that. It'll just be first party studio stuff on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Chris,
whatever possibly would work, I don't want the status quo to change. I think that's the answer that I can basically just say with a straight face at this point.
Chris, are you thinking that? What do you think? Are you thinking Xbox is going to go first party exclusive?
No, I don't think so. Because the only thing that's in the way, I'm sure Microsoft would love it. If Microsoft could just get rid of consoles and have Game Pass on everything and that's their revenue, I'm sure they'd be like, perfect, we did it. We set out to do a thing and we win. But Game Pass Ultimate, the actual one they want to sell everybody, the one they push, only works if it's also on a console. Because PC Game Pass is like nowhere near as much money. And I don't think the PC market for Game Pass alone is enough to sustain Microsoft financially. Like if everybody was only using PC Game Pass, it's not enough. They need it on a console. And again, I don't think if it goes to PlayStation, it would work. Sony would say take 30% of a cut of all Game Pass subscriptions on PlayStation or something. Microsoft would probably raise the prices to make that work. And then it would be all confusing.
Game Pass would be $30+ a month then if that was the case.
100%. Yeah, like sure, would they work out something where PS Plus and Game Pass combines into maybe, I don't freaking know. I have no idea, but I mean,
if they did that, it wouldn't bother me because I have both of them. So you know what? That's probably saving me money for my case, but for somebody else who doesn't own another console.
Yeah, same. But Microsoft knows that the only way to make the money off Game Pass is to have Game Pass on a console. I have to imagine that most of their Game Pass subscriptions do come from actual Xboxes. I don't think enough people subscribe just for the xCloud, like the streaming, and I don't think enough people subscribe just for the PC Game Pass. I think PC is a rough market for that because they'll subscribe for a bit, and then a Steam sale will happen, and then they'll drop out of PC Game Pass because they're like, I just bought RoboCop, I don't need Game Pass. But like in console, people are just always on it because like all three of us are doing. I hadn't owned an Xbox from the first Xbox. That was the last one I had. And even then I bought it to mod it. Like Xbox has always been my like console I'm experimenting with, not actually like PlayStation where I'm like, this is where I buy my games. I got an Xbox strictly for Game Pass. Adam, you same thing. Kaylan, you basically same thing, right? So
I got it for one game.
I still use my PC for some of it too, because if it's indie games, like my PC can run it. Like basically, my Xbox is there for when a Starfield comes out, and I'm like, my PC will die if I try to play this.
Oh yeah, 100%. I use the Game Pass on PC all the time. I'm playing Cities Skylines 2 on there now and stuff, but there are games that like I wouldn't have Game Pass just on PC. I don't think I'd pay for it. I think I'd go in and out of it, but I like having, the actual Game Pass on also the console where, Starfield comes out, or even just I want to play some indie games on a couch kind of idea, something like, I think that a lot of people prefer Game Pass in the TV couch console experience, and that's where most of their money's made. And unless Microsoft comes out with the like cheaper console, like it still runs Game Pass amazingly, but I don't know, they figure out something. Like I could see them coming out with streaming only consoles like they were talking about, pushing more apps on Samsung TVs or all TVs, phones, obviously, they're trying already to do that. Microsoft has an official guide on how to put xCloud on the Steam Deck, which runs Linux. It's not even Windows, which is Microsoft. They're even just pushing, hey, play Game Pass on your Steam Deck. They've partnered with the ROG Ally because they're like, hey, it runs Windows, install Game Pass. Like they're pushing Game Pass on everything. And I think if they could, they absolutely would, and then drop out of the console market. But they know if they get rid of an Xbox, they're not going to be able to get it on the PlayStation, and then there just won't be enough Game Pass subscribers anymore because the console version of Game Pass is gone. So I think they'd only drop out of the console market if they could figure out how to still sell Game Pass to console players. If they can figure that out,
and my fear is that by what they're doing right now is to try to test the market and see if Sony will pick up the phone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, guaranteed. There's been so many comments by Phil Spencer in the past where he has said he wants Game Pass on everything. He wants it on the Switch. He's had talks with Nintendo, and Nintendo is like, no, we do not want xCloud on the Switch. We don't want that. We don't want that subscription service. It'll cut into their revenue, or maybe they just don't like the idea. I don't know. I guarantee you
because there'll be games on that service that they don't have to charge $80 for.
Yeah, and they can't regulate the age, or I don't freaking know. I don't know. But
I think one of the problems is that, like, because I think the markup right now is I think that Sony gets a 30% cut of any game sold on its system or disc or whatever. So if you take $80 times 30, you're looking at like $24,
Like
about $24, $25 per game, right? But Game Pass at what, $18 a pop? You're looking at $4, $5. And so, like, yeah, Sony would rather you buy their game than buy a Game Pass subscription. But I think there's one thing that we haven't talked about, and that is the idea of streaming. And like, streaming yet is not where it needs to be in order to have online gaming. So I still think that we're quite a bit of a ways out from them doing a streaming only console, or even like a Game Pass stick or something like that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think this
more
is
likely that they're pushing real hard to get Sony to pick up the phone than anything else.
Oh yeah. I could see Microsoft in a perfect world to them. They would partner with Steam, and Game Pass would be an actual subscription within Steam, and you actually installed Steam games through Game Pass, just like you install the games on Xbox. Make a deal with PlayStation, same idea, install the games directly, not streaming, like it's an actual install subscription. And then make a deal with Nintendo, which, would have to be xCloud because they wouldn't be able to install any of those games on that system.
Yeah, it would catch
and then
fire.
Plus have it would
now,
catch fire. And then xCloud online, like still like logging in and just streaming through your phone or whatever. That's, I think, to Microsoft, if you gave them like, what's your dream in the future, that would be their pick. If other companies didn't have a say, that's what they would decide, I think.
Yeah, for me, Microsoft has always been about selling the Game Pass and not the game. So I don't see them I could see them maybe doing like a release if it's years after it's come out and like everyone on Game Pass has played it and they're kind of doing it, hey, test the waters. But the only other thing I can see them doing that Sony might buy is if they did like a Game Pass Essentials, where it's like, hey, we're going to do the first party games as a Game Pass service on PlayStation. There's no third party games. It's only the things that are Xbox exclusive, because Sony's not getting any of that money anyways, and they're not losing anything by putting that on the thing on their console. So the only thing I can see Microsoft getting away with is doing a PlayStation, Microsoft Essentials Game Pass.
Yeah,
Sony gets a small cut.
Point. That is a good point, because it would be a win-win, I think, for them for sure if they were trying to get.
But I also think Microsoft would not be too pleased about having to have like, okay, you can have our store, but only about 5% of it.
Yeah.
Because like almost everything they announce every month is not Microsoft exclusive to anything. It's just all third-party stuff. So I think for them, I mean, they probably would still take the deal, but they would probably begrudgingly take it because they'd be a little salty about not getting to get a little bit extra money.
But I think it's one of those things that if they went to PlayStation and said, hey, we're going to charge you the same price, you get the Game Pass Essentials for PlayStation, same price as the full Game Pass that you can play anywhere else. You're now getting that market that is walled off from you. Your PlayStation's not getting threatened by the idea of their games being cannibalized by Game Pass. Like, I think that's the only way that you could probably get both to work.
Yeah, I think that's how Sony accepts it. I'm not sure if Microsoft immediately takes that deal though, because to them it's saying like, hey, we'll take your service, but neuter it to a point that it's really almost like not your service.
But the key of that suggestion I have for Microsoft is that you are getting the same value. You're getting the same price. Like, you don't charge cheaper to the Sony like community. You charge them the same price, whether it's you charge the $30 or $20 or whatever it is for the Game Pass Ultimate. but you just
yeah,
get
but then all
less
the
on
money that they're
PlayStation
spending
console.
on getting third-party outlets to also be on Game Pass would be null and void. So at that point, it would almost feel like Game Pass, not on PlayStation, would then be not as good a thing. Like, sure, as we know, the PC crowd does exist for, but as Chris said, like, not as many people on PC probably use Game Pass regularly. So because essentially, like, let's be honest, if Game Pass goes on Sony, no one's buying an Xbox anymore. Like, at that point, like, now it's gone. So if Microsoft goes to a Sony platform, now all of a sudden a bunch of their potential customers for Xbox are now going to fly the coop. They're either going to fly the coop, they're going to sell their Xbox and get a PlayStation, or you're just not going to see any new sales of Xbox consoles, which means you're going to see less sales of Game Pass that are giving you the full value. So now you're spending money on these third-party developers to get games onto your platform, and you're not getting nearly as many plays of it. So now that's just money you're just spending for no reason. So I think it's that weird case of like they may still take the deal if they have to neuter Game Pass specifically for PlayStation, but like I still think they'd look at it and be like, that's a lot of money we're suddenly going to be spending. They may just completely like start shutting down all the money that they're throwing for like bigger third-party games to go on their subscription, because it's a lot of money to be passing around for like most of your console audience to no longer be touching it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, we've talked about this, and I think that there's an aspect that Game Pass isn't sustainable at the market and the price that it is. Like, especially when you're throwing around as much money as you are, you're doing your own development. Like, maybe it gets to the point where Game Pass doesn't have third-party games. They're not paying for that, and it becomes a first party exclusive on Game Pass, and so there's no third party. It's strictly the in-house games that they make, and that's where they kind of recoup their costs. They don't decrease the price, but it just becomes more Microsoft exclusive stuff.
Either that, or it may just become a case where they start leaning more into, hey, if we're going to put third-party games on the system, it'll be indie-based, and if they are big AAA third-party, it's maybe like one a month, so that it's like how PlayStation has its big free game every month. It's like, okay, here's the one big one, and then here's a bunch of other small stuff that doesn't cost us much.
Well, if we can look at the streaming platforms as is, most of them are leaning more heavily into their own original programming than they are into third party. Like, Netflix has almost exclusively moved away from doing, third party, and it's like a weird thing, but they're not doing third party movies and stuff. Like, they're doing a lot more originals because that's where the money is for them. And I think maybe that's like forecasting what Game Pass eventually looks like, where they're not paying people to put their own work, they're just making their own stuff and putting it on there.
I mean, sure, but we also have to keep in mind that there are way more apps out there potentially for movie streaming or TV streaming than there are, say, with gaming, where there's literally like, I mean, let's be honest, there's 2 consoles that would be doing this. Nintendo is on its own island doing its own thing. They don't really count in the equation. So it's not quite the same situation, but
it is, but it isn't, because like, I'd say there is, but there isn't, in the sense that, there's only 2 services, but the ecosystems, like, the difference is that you still have the ecosystems of consoles, right? The thing is, I have a TV and it can play Apple TV, it can play Netflix, it can play Crave, it can play all of those things. Whereas each console is its own little garden. And so, while there's only 2 streaming services, there is Steam Deck, which if you have your library in Steam Deck, you're not likely to jump ship. If you have your PlayStation console, you're not likely to jump ship. So I hear where you're saying, like, there's not as many competitors, but there is, in the sense that we are all in our own little camps.
Yeah, and I know somebody probably watching this is thinking, oh, come on, Ubisoft and EA have their own service. I'm like, yeah, they do. No one uses them.
I mean, then nobody does. I wouldn't even know what game is on Ubisoft Plus. I couldn't even name what the Ubisoft service is.
Like, Ubisoft seems to have partnered with PlayStation Plus Extra, and then EA Play is a part of Game Pass. Like, they realized they couldn't survive alone.
That's how you know they're not actual services anymore. They might as well be gone.
Yeah. So I guess, like, to wrap it up, like, why do you think Microsoft would be exploring this route? Like, have we hinted at it? Is it them looking to get out of the consoles? Is it them?
I think they do want to get out of it.
I do too. I do too. And I think that I think that they did make a fair bit of money on some of their releases on stuff like Switch, and they've realized Switch is not a competitor to Game Pass at all. Like people are not like, oh, I can't get an Xbox, I have a Switch. Like they're so different that I think that when it comes to looking at Nintendo, they're like, hey, how can we make a bit more money? Let's throw stuff like Hi-Fi Rush on Switch. Like there's no loss to us there if we do that. There's only gain. Looking at PlayStation, I think this is them testing the waters. I think this is them getting a feel for how many people in the PlayStation ecosystem aren't necessarily on Xbox, because if they were, they probably have Game Pass. Why would they grab Sea of Thieves on PlayStation if they already have it on Xbox? That they're going to test the waters and see how much of a demand there is. Because if it's a lot, then they're like, wow, there's a lot of people on PlayStation that clearly don't have Xbox. What can we do about that? Because look how many people jumped at Sea of Thieves. That's in Game Pass. No one's buying that game unless, of course, they don't already have an Xbox. Right? So it's a good way to test the waters and see what the demand would be like, and maybe start to do some more. Kind of like what PlayStation did with PC. They only put basically the first Horizon game on there, and they were like, all right, if this sells well,
they're waiting a considerable amount of time before they put anything on those services.
Yeah, but now PlayStation's putting like almost everything on there, where when they first put Horizon, that was the only game. They did one, and they're like, let's see how this goes. And after it did well, they were like, fuck it, grab Sackboy, throw them on there. Grab Ratchet and Clank, grab Last of Us.
Is Helldivers 2 going to be on their day one with Steam?
I think that might be a PC day one. Yeah, actually, I don't know that off the top of my head, like for sure, but I feel like it might be. Because I know that when they've been advertising the trailer, they keep mentioning PC as well, so I assume it's going to launch day one. So, I mean, it tells you, too, that even PlayStation's going like, yeah, there are some properties that we can also throw day one on something else because, you know, we know, like, again, with PC, it's a whole different market. They know that that's not really going to impede on their flow if they put it. It's the other way around. I don't think you would ever see Helldivers 2 on Xbox day one.
Helldivers 2 is coming to PC day one.
Yeah, there you go.
So it is that case. So, like, I think it really is just a case of, like, Microsoft probably wants out, and they're just trying to figure out what door they need to open to get in there, and they're drawing a bunch of doors on the wall and seeing which one of them finally turns into a functional knob and actually opens. And I think at this point, like, I'm still doomsdaying, scenarioing this and being like, man, they probably just wish they could buy Sony right now and just get it over with.
Oh, yeah. There's no way that would go through. We saw issue with Activision.
Well, you say that, but I mean, every time we think one of them isn't going to go through, it still does, because greed is ultimately what gets everything through, so...
Well, there's also the aspect that you got to remember that Sony is much bigger than just the PlayStation side too, and I think they'd have to either purchase the gaming division of itself, and I think that's a big profitable part of Sony, or they'd have to buy Sony as a whole. And I think there's actually laws in Japan that like Japanese companies cannot be sold to non-Japanese stakeholders. There's your international business law for the day.
I think we lost. Oh no, Chris, you still there?
I'm back.
Okay, we're still good. We're good.
We're hanging on by a thread.
Discord hates us.
We're going to wrap it up before we push our luck too much. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to us. If you like that and you want to hear more, we post every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, wherever you get your podcasts. We are also on YouTube. Search for us for PixelPlay Podcast. Subscribe if you can. It helps us out a lot. Like and subscribe. If you've been listening and you're on YouTube, leave a comment. Let us know. Do you think that Microsoft is going to go third party? Are they, what do you think is going to happen with all this? And if you guys want to join our chat, we can chat with us in the Discord. You can find us at linktr.ee/PixelPlay Podcast. And with that, I've been one of your hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, alongside Adam at CS Radical and Chris at Gin and Chris. We'll see you guys on Friday with the review of the PlayStation Portal. Bye for now.